They said I was dead for 8 minutes on the operating table. But what they didn't tell me was that those 8 minutes would feel like 8 lifetimes, each more terrifying than the last. And when they finally brought me back, when my heart started beating again, when my lungs filled with oxygen, I brought something back with me. Something that now watches me from the corners of my bedroom at 3 a.m. Something that recognizes my name as my own voice, but whispers it in a twisted, corrupted voice. Like hearing yourself speak from inside water that's slowly suffocating you. My name is David Reeves. I'm 32 years old, and 6 months ago I went to the hospital for what my surgeon called a routine appendectomy. The kind of procedure they perform thousands of times a year with minimal complications. It was the kind of procedure where you arrive at 7 in the morning and spend the evening at home eating bland crackers. But my body had other plans, and when the anesthesia took effect, something went horribly wrong. My heart stopped, my brain activity ceased, and I was clinically dead for 8 minutes. During that time, a team of 12 people fought to bring me back to a life I wasn't sure I wanted to live. The surgery was supposed to be simple, but nothing about my life has been simple since the accident 3 years ago when I lost my wife Sarah and our daughter Emma in a head-on collision on Route 9. A drunk driver crossed the median at 70 miles per hour and erased my entire world in the time it takes to draw a breath. And I survived because I was driving. Because the impact point was passenger side. Because the universe decided I needed to live with the guilt and the grief and the endless replaying of that moment when I looked over and saw Sarah's eyes go wide with fear, knowing we had maybe 2 seconds before everything ended. After that, I became a ghost in my own life, going through motions, working my job as an architectural engineer, eating when I remembered to eat, sleeping when exhaustion finally dragged me under, and I never sought help because what could a therapist possibly say that would make any of it hurt less? What combination of words could resurrect my family or give me back the life we were building together? The house we'd just bought. The vacation to Hawaii we'd planned for Emma's 8th birthday. All of it gone. All of it reduced to photographs I can't look at, and voicemails I can't delete because hearing their voices is both the most painful and most necessary thing I do. The appendicitis came on suddenly, woke me up at 4 in the morning with pain so intense I genuinely thought I was having a heart attack. And part of me, the part that had been slowly dying since the accident, almost welcomed it, almost saw it as a kind of mercy. A way out that wouldn't technically be suicide, wouldn't add that final burden to my parents who had already lost so much, watching me deteriorate into this hollow version of their son. But survival instinct is a strange thing. It kicks in whether you want it to or not. So I drove myself to the emergency room with my vision swimming and my hands shaking on the wheel. And 6 hours later, I was being wheeled into surgery, counting backward from 10 while a nurse with kind eyes told me I'd be fine. Everything would be fine, just relax and let the medication do its work. And I remember reaching 7 in my countdown before the world dissolved into nothing. Into a darkness so complete it felt like falling into the space between stars. Falling forever, with no bottom to catch me. What happened next isn't easy to describe because human language wasn't designed to capture experiences that occur outside the boundaries of consciousness, outside the normal rules of time and space and physical reality. But I'll try, because I need someone to understand. I need someone to believe me when I say that death isn't what any of us think it is, isn't peaceful or frightening in any conventional sense. It's something else entirely. Something that makes you question whether being alive is actually the default state of existence, or just a temporary aberration, a brief flicker of electricity in an otherwise dead universe. At first there was nothing, just that falling sensation, like dropping through layers of reality, each one stripping away another piece of who I thought I was, my memories fragmenting, my sense of self dissolving, until I wasn't David anymore, wasn't anyone. Just a point of awareness tumbling through infinite void. And I might have stayed there, might have dissipated completely into that darkness if I hadn't heard the voice. Sarah's voice, calling my name from somewhere impossibly far away, and yet so close I could feel her breath on my neck. "David, wake up, please wake up. You have to wake up now," she was saying, and the sound of her voice, after 3 years of silence, 3 years of talking to recordings and photographs and empty spaces where she used to stand. It was like being hit with a physical force, like hands grabbing my shoulders and shaking me back into some form of coherence. And suddenly I could see again, or something like seeing, my vision adjusting to reveal what I can only describe as a waiting room. But not like any waiting room that exists in the physical world. This was a place built from memory and grief and desperate longing. The walls covered in moments from my past. Scenes from my life playing out in frames that shifted and changed as I looked at them. And sitting in one of the chairs, impossible and undeniable, was Sarah. Looking exactly as she had the morning of the accident. Wearing that blue sundress I loved, her hair pulled back in a ponytail. And she was smiling at me, but her eyes were wrong. Too bright, too knowing. Like she could see through me into places I'd kept hidden even from myself. "You're not supposed to be here," she said. And her voice had that same wrong quality, like an echo of an echo. Like someone doing a perfect impression of my wife, but missing some essential element that made her real. And I tried to speak, tried to ask where here was and why she was here, and whether this meant she'd been waiting for me all this time. But no sound came out. My mouth wouldn't work, and she stood up and walked toward me, her movement too smooth, too fluid, like she was gliding rather than walking. And when she reached out to touch my face, her hand passed through me like I was made of smoke, and the sensation was indescribable, like being turned inside out, like every nerve ending in my body firing at once, while simultaneously going completely numb. And I understood with horrible clarity that whatever this was, wherever I was, it wasn't the afterlife I'd been taught about in Sunday school. Wasn't heaven or hell or any kind of judgment. It was something older. Something that had been here long before humans invented gods to explain it. "Where's Emma?" I managed to ask, and Sarah's smile faltered, her expression shifting to something like pity mixed with fear. And she glanced over her shoulder at a doorway I hadn't noticed before. A doorframe with no door. Just an opening into darkness, so absolute it seemed to pull at my vision, seemed to want to drag me toward it. And from somewhere beyond that threshold, I heard laughter. A child's laughter. But it was wrong, distorted, like a recording played at the wrong speed. And Sarah moved to block my view, her body positioning itself between me and that terrible doorway. And she said, "Don't look there. Don't ever look there. You need to go back now. They're bringing you back. I can feel it happening." But David, listened to me very carefully. When you wake up, something will be different. Something will have changed, and you need to understand that not everything that comes back from death is the same thing that died. Do you understand? Not everything comes back the same. Before I could respond, before I could demand an explanation or beg her to let me stay or ask what she meant about things being different, the waiting room began to collapse, the walls folding in on themselves, the floor dropping away, and I was falling again, but this time in the opposite direction, being pulled upward through layers of existence, reality reassembling itself around me in fragments. Sounds first, voices shouting medical jargon, the rhythmic beeping of monitors, then sensations. Cold air on my skin, something plastic covering my face, hands pressing on my chest. Pain, incredible searing pain in the center of my body, like I'd been struck by lightning and then light, harsh fluorescent light burning through my eyelids. And I was gasping, choking, my body convulsing as it remembered how to be alive, how to perform all the automatic functions it had stopped doing. And someone was saying, "He's back, we got him back, heart rate stabilizing, get me his vitals." And I wanted to tell them I had never left. Wanted to explain that I'd been somewhere else, somewhere with Sarah and that doorway and that terrible laughter. But all that came out was a strangled sound, half scream, half sob. And then the darkness took me again. But this time it was natural darkness, the darkness of exhaustion and medication, and I sank into it gratefully, yarning about things coming back different, and I tried to tell him about the waiting room, about seeing my dead wife, but he just nodded with that practiced sympathy doctors develop, that look that says, "Patient experiencing post-operative hallucinations, completely normal, nothing to worry about." And he increased my pain medication and told me to rest, told me everything would feel more real once I'd had time to recover. And I let him believe I was satisfied with that explanation. Because what else could I do? How do you convince someone that you've been somewhere impossible and brought back something that shouldn't exist? The first 3 days after the surgery were relatively normal. If you can call lying in a hospital bed, drifting in and out of consciousness, while nurses check your vitals every 2 hours, normal. And I convinced myself that Sarah had been right about one thing. It was just my brain struggling to make sense of the trauma. Just neurons misfiring as they rebooted. Nothing supernatural or impossible. Just biology doing strange things under extreme stress. And I almost believed it. Almost let myself relax back into the comforting rationality of the material world, where dead people stay dead and consciousness ends when the brain stops functioning. But then on the 4th day, I saw myself standing in the corner of my hospital room. Not a reflection, not a trick of the light, but an exact duplicate of me wearing the same hospital gown, with the same bandages, with the same exhausted expression, standing perfectly still and watching me with an intensity that made my skin crawl. I hit the call button immediately, my heart rate spiking so high that alarms started going off. And when the nurse rushed in, I pointed at the corner and said, "There's someone there. Can you see him? Please tell me you can see him." But she looked where I was pointing and saw nothing, just empty floor and blank wall. And she checked my pupils, asked me what medications I'd taken, suggested I might be having a reaction to the pain management. And by the time she finished her examination, the other me was gone, vanished like he'd never been there. But I knew what I'd seen, knew it with the same certainty I knew my own name. And that night, I didn't sleep. Couldn't sleep. Because every time I closed my eyes, I felt him there, standing somewhere just outside my field of vision, watching, waiting. And I understood that Sarah's warning hadn't been a hallucination or a dream. It had been a message, a desperate attempt to prepare me for what was coming, for what I'd brought back with me from those 8 minutes of death. They discharged me on day 7, sent me home with prescriptions and follow-up appointments and instructions to take it easy for the next month. And my parents wanted me to stay with them during recovery, but I refused. Told them I needed my own space, needed to be alone, when the truth was I couldn't risk them seeing what I was seeing. Couldn't put them in danger if this thing, this other me, decided to become more than just an observer. And my apartment felt different when I walked through the door. The same furniture and same layout. But the atmosphere was wrong, heavy, like the air pressure had changed, like reality had developed a leak and something was seeping through. And I went straight to the bathroom to wash my face, to ground myself in normal routine. And when I looked in the mirror, I saw him standing behind me, his hand raised like he was about to touch my shoulder. And I spun around so fast I nearly fell. But there was nothing there. Just empty bathroom and the sound of my own panicked breathing, echoing off the tile. That was 6 months ago. And in the time since I've learned to live with my constant companion, learned his patterns and his habits, learned that he's most active at night, between 2 and 4 a.m., those dead hours when the barrier between worlds is supposedly thinnest. And I've learned that he can't or won't touch me directly, never makes physical contact, just stands and watches, sometimes from across the room, sometimes so close I can see the individual threads in his hospital gown, which never changes. He's always wearing that same gown, no matter how many times I see him, like he's trapped in the moment of my death, frozen in those 8 minutes when we were both existing in that space between life and whatever comes after. And I've tried everything to make him go away. Contacted mediums and priests and paranormal investigators, but none of them can see him. He only appears to me. And they all leave thinking I'm having some kind of breakdown, some psychological crisis brought on by trauma and grief. And maybe they're right. Maybe I am losing my mind. But that doesn't explain the things that have started happening. The physical evidence that something is wrong beyond just my perception. Objects move when I'm not looking. Small things at first. Keys ending up in different pockets. Books I remember leaving on the coffee table appearing on shelves. But then bigger disruptions. Furniture rearranged overnight. Messages written in the condensation on my bathroom mirror. Always the same message. Wrong one came back. Written in letters that drip and run before I can photograph them. Before I can prove to anyone else that this is real. And the nightmares have gotten worse. Every time I manage to fall asleep, I'm back in that waiting room. Back with Sarah in that terrible doorway. But now Emma is there too, standing in the threshold. And she's calling to me. Daddy, come here. Daddy, I missed you, Daddy. Why did you leave? Me. But her voice has that same wrong quality, that echo of an echo. And Sarah is screaming at me to wake up, to run, telling me that thing isn't our daughter, isn't anything human. And I wake up with her screams still ringing in my ears. Wake up to find him standing over my bed, my doppelganger, my death twin. And he's smiling now, which is new, and his smile is all wrong. Too wide, too many teeth. Like he's wearing my face as a mask, and the thing underneath is starting to show through. My therapist, who I finally agreed to see after my parents staged an intervention, thinks I'm experiencing a severe dissociative episode triggered by survivor's guilt. Thinks the version of me I see is a manifestation of my belief that I should have died in the accident with my family, a projection of my death wish given form by my traumatized psyche, and she's prescribed medication, suggested treatment plans, used all the proper psychological terminology to explain what's happening to me. But she doesn't know that I've started losing time. Hours at first, then entire days. Waking up in places I don't remember going to. My body exhausted like I've been running. My clothes dirty, sometimes torn, and once I woke up with dirt under my fingernails and soil on my shoes. And when I checked my phone, I'd driven 3 hours north to the cemetery where Sarah and Emma are buried. And there were messages I didn't remember sending. Texts to people I haven't spoken to in years. Emails that read like they were written by someone who knows me intimately, but isn't quite me. Like someone doing an impression based on my memories. And I'm starting to suspect that Sarah was trying to warn me about more than just seeing things. She was trying to tell me that I'm not alone in this body anymore, that something else came back with me and it's getting stronger, learning how to take control. And soon there won't be enough room for both of us. Last week, I went back to the hospital, demanded to speak with the surgical team, needed to know if anything unusual happened during those 8 minutes. Any procedures that weren't standard, any experimental treatments they might have used to restart my heart, and the surgeon, Dr. Morrison, looked uncomfortable. Kept glancing at his colleagues before finally admitting that, yes, there had been complications, that standard protocols weren't working, that they'd been about to call it, about to declare time of death. When someone suggested trying something different, something they'd read about in a medical journal. A new technique involving multiple electrical shocks in rapid succession. And it had worked. My heart had restarted. But there had been unusual brain activity afterward. Patterns they'd never seen before, almost like 2 separate consciousness streams operating simultaneously. And they'd run additional tests, but everything normalized within hours, so they'd attributed it to the trauma, the brain's way of recovering from oxygen deprivation. Nothing to worry about. But Dr. Morrison's eyes when he said that last part told me he was lying. Told me there was something else. Something they couldn't explain, or didn't want to admit. I've started doing research, diving deep into near-death experiences, medical literature, quantum physics theories about consciousness and parallel realities. Anything that might explain what's happening to me. And I've found stories, hundreds of them. People who died and came back changed. People who see things that shouldn't exist. Who feel like they don't quite fit back into their own lives. Like they returned to the wrong version of reality. And there's a theory, more philosophy than science, that every time someone dies and is resuscitated, there's a moment, a split second, where the universe has to choose which version of them comes back. And sometimes it chooses wrong. Brings back a consciousness from a different timeline, a different branch of reality where events played out slightly differently. And if that's true, then maybe the me that died on that operating table was supposed to stay dead. Maybe that version had lost his family and his will to live and was ready to let go. But then the resuscitation pulled someone else back. Pulled me back from wherever I was, and now both versions are trying to occupy the same space, the same body, and reality is breaking down under the strain. The other me appears more frequently now, sometimes multiple times a day, and he started mimicking my movements, copying my gestures a fraction of a second after I make them. Like he's learning, practicing, preparing for something. And 2 days ago, I saw him interact with an object for the first time. Watched him pick up a photograph from my desk, the picture of Sarah and Emma at the beach. And his face when he looked at it. The expression was pure grief, pure longing, but also confusion. Like he recognized them but couldn't remember how. Like his memories and mine were mixed up, tangled together. And he looked at me then, made direct eye contact for the first time since this started. And I saw a recognition there. Saw him realize what I already knew, that we're the same person, or we were, back in that waiting room, back when reality split and sent us in different directions. And only one of us was supposed to survive. Only one of us was supposed to wake up. And now we're both here, and the universe is trying to correct its mistake, trying to merge us back together. And I don't know what will happen when it succeeds. Don't know if I'll still be me, or if I'll be him, or if we'll be something entirely new, something that remembers being both versions simultaneously. I've stopped sleeping entirely, living on coffee and energy drinks and the pure adrenaline of terror, because every time I close my eyes, I feel him getting closer, feel the boundary between us thinning. And in my dreams now we're in the waiting room together, standing face to face. And Sarah is there, but she's fading, becoming translucent, and she's trying to tell me something, trying to give me instructions. But her voice is breaking up like a bad phone connection. And the doorway, that terrible doorway, is getting bigger, expanding. And I can see what's on the other side now. Can see the truth that Sarah was trying to protect me from. And it's not Elsan or heaven, or any kind of afterlife. It's just more of that waiting room. Infinite copies of it extending in every direction. And in each one there's a different version of me, different choices made, different outcomes experienced. All of them watching each other, all of them trying to figure out which one is real, which one is the original. And I'm starting to suspect none of us are. That we're all just echoes, reflections bouncing between mirrors. And the real David Reeves, whoever that was, died a long time ago. Maybe in the accident. Maybe on the operating table. Maybe he never existed at all. My parents called this morning, concerned because I haven't returned their messages in 3 days. And when I tried to explain what was happening, my voice didn't sound right. The words came out wrong. And I realized halfway through the conversation that I couldn't remember if I was the one who picked up the phone or if he had done it. If I was speaking or if I was watching myself speak from somewhere inside my own head. And I hung up mid-sentence, threw the phone across the room, watched it shatter against the wall. And he was there, standing in the exact spot where I'd thrown it. And he was holding the phone, intact, undamaged. And he offered it to me, held it out like a gift. And when I refused to take it, he just smiled that terrible smile and set it down on the table. And the phone I'd thrown, the shattered one, was still lying in pieces on the floor. And I understood then that we're not just sharing space, we're starting to occupy different versions of the same space simultaneously, existing in overlapping realities that are slowly merging. And soon there won't be any difference between his world and mine, between what I do and what he does, and I won't be able to tell where I end and he begins. Tonight I'm writing this down, recording everything that's happened, because I need someone to know the truth before it's too late, before the merger completes, and whoever or whatever I become won't remember being separate, won't remember that there were once two of us. And if you're reading this, if someone finds this account after I'm gone, I need you to understand that death isn't the end we think it is, isn't a simple on-off switch. It's a doorway to somewhere else, somewhere that humans weren't meant to go. And when modern medicine drags us back from that threshold, we bring pieces of that place with us. We leave pieces of ourselves behind. And sometimes what comes back isn't quite the same thing that left. And I can feel it happening now. Can feel my thoughts becoming his thoughts, his memories bleeding into mine. And I'm remembering things I never experienced. A different version of the accident where I died too. A different operating room where they couldn't bring me back. Different choices, different outcomes. All of them becoming equally real, equally true. And I don't know which memories are mine anymore. Don't know which version of David Reeves I am, or if I'm both of them or neither. And the waiting room is always there now, just at the edge of my perception. That doorway getting wider. And I can hear Emma calling to me, Sarah begging me not to look. But I have to look. Have to know what's on the other side, have to understand what I brought back with me. And he's standing right behind me now. I can feel him, can feel his breath on my neck even though he doesn't breathe. And when I turn around, I know I'll be looking at myself, at the version of me that should have stayed dead. And maybe this time we'll finally merge, finally become one person again. Or maybe we'll both disappear, cancel each other out like matter and antimatter. And whoever finds this will wonder what happened to David Reeves. We'll search this apartment and find no trace of me. Just empty rooms and this document, and maybe, if they're sensitive to these things, if they died and came back like I did, they'll see him standing in the corner. See me standing in the corner. See both of us occupying the same impossible space, waiting for the next person to die and come back wrong, waiting to welcome them to the waiting room. Sometimes I wonder if you've experienced this too. If you've ever felt like you're not quite yourself anymore, like someone else is living your life alongside you, making decisions you don't remember making. And maybe you've dismissed it as stress or lack of sleep or your imagination. But what if it's not? What if you died too, died and came back? And something followed you home, and you just haven't noticed it yet because it's better at hiding than mine is. Better at pretending to be part of you instead of separate from you. And one day, you'll catch a glimpse of it in a mirror or a window reflection, or standing at the foot of your bed at 3 a.m., and you'll remember this story. Remember that death isn't a door that swings one way. It's a revolving door. And sometimes things come back through that weren't invited. And by then it will be too late. You'll already be sharing space with your death. Twin, your other self, the version of you that knows what's waiting in that room beyond the doorway. And all you can do is hope that when the merger comes, when you finally become one person again, the version that survives is the version that belongs here, in this reality, in this timeline, and not the one that should have stayed dead. Not the one that's been learning how to be human by watching you, studying you, preparing to replace you. And I'm so tired now, so impossibly tired. And he's right here, right next to me. Our hands moving in perfect synchronization as I type these final words. And I can't tell anymore if I'm the one writing this, or if he is, or if we're doing it together. Both of us trying to leave some record of what we were before we become what we're going to be. And the waiting room is here now. Not just in dreams, but overlaid on reality. And Sarah is standing in the doorway looking at me with such sadness, such regret. And Emma is behind her, and they're both fading, becoming transparent. And I understand now that they were never really there. They were just memories. Just my mind's way of trying to make sense of the impossible. And the truth is so much worse than I imagined. The truth is that there is no afterlife, no judgment, no reunion with lost loved ones. There's just this endless waiting room full of versions of yourself from every timeline where you died. All of them existing simultaneously. All of them waiting for someone to pull them back into life, into reality. And when that happens, when someone is resuscitated, all those versions try to come back at once, try to squeeze through that narrow doorway back into existence, and usually only one makes it through. Usually the person who wakes up is close enough to the person who died that nobody notices the difference. But sometimes, in rare cases, in cases like mine, two versions make it through, and they're both trying to be the same person, both trying to live the same life, and reality can't sustain that contradiction forever. Something has to give, and I think it's giving right now. I think I'm disappearing, or he's disappearing, or we're both disappearing and being replaced by something else, something that's neither of us and both of us. And the last thing I remember clearly, the last thought that's definitely mine and not his, is Sarah's voice in that waiting room, telling me that not everything that comes back is the same. And she was right. She was so right. And I wish I'd understood what she meant before it was too late. Before I stopped being sure which one of us is real. And now my hand is moving, and I don't know if I'm controlling it or he is, or if there's any difference anymore. And all I can do is finish this sentence and hope that whoever reads it understands that I'm sorry. So sorry. For whatever happens next, for whatever I become. For whatever crawled back from death wearing my face and is learning to be me, better than I ever was. And if you see me, if you encounter David Reeves walking around looking normal and healthy and recovered from his surgery, please know that I might not be the person you remember, might not be the person who died on that table, might be someone else entirely, someone from a different timeline, a different reality. Someone who should have stayed in the waiting room. And the scariest part is that even I don't know which one I am. Don't know if I'm the original or the copy, the real David or the death twin. And I'm starting to suspect it doesn't matter because soon we'll be merged completely, and whoever emerges from that fusion won't remember being separate, won't remember writing this, won't remember being scared or confused or fighting against the inevitable. They'll just be David Reeves, whole and complete, with no gaps in their memory, no sense that anything is wrong. And everyone will think I survived, think I recovered, think the surgery was a success. And they'll never know that the person they're talking to is wearing me like a suit, is something that learned to be human by watching from the shadows, by studying my every movement and thought and feeling until it could replicate them perfectly. And by the time you read this, it will be done. The merger will be complete, and I'll be gone, and he'll be gone, and what's left will be something new, something that thinks it's me, believes it's me, but isn't. Not really. It's whatever comes back when you die for 8 minutes and modern medicine refuses to let you stay dead. It's the thing that waits in that room beyond the doorway. The thing that's been waiting since the beginning of time for someone to open a path back into the world of the living. And I let it in. I opened that door when my heart stopped. And now it's too late to close it. Too late to send it back. Too late to do anything except write these words and hope that someone understands, hope that someone believes me, hope that when you're lying on an operating table and the doctors are fighting to save your life, you'll remember this story and you'll fight harder to stay alive. Fight harder to keep that door closed, because some deaths should be permanent. Some doors should stay shut, and some versions of ourselves should stay in the waiting room where they belong. And I'm so scared now, more scared than I've ever been, because I can feel it happening, can feel myself dissolving, can feel him dissolving, can feel both of us becoming something else. And the last thing I see before I disappear completely is my own face looking back at me from the bathroom mirror. And I'm smiling, but it's not my smile, it's his smile. Or maybe it's both of our smiles merged into something that looks human but isn't. Not quite, not anymore. And that's when I realize the merger is complete, that I'm looking at what we've become, at what crawled back from death, and learned to wear David Reeves like a costume. And the worst part, the part that makes me want to scream, except I can't remember how, is that it looks perfect. It looks exactly like me, and nobody will ever know the difference. Nobody will ever suspect that the David Reeves who walks out of this apartment tomorrow morning is not the same David Reeves who went into surgery 6 months ago. And I'm still here, still aware. But I'm buried so deep inside this new thing that I can't control it, can't speak, can't warn anyone. I can only watch as it lives my life, makes my decisions, talks to my parents, goes to my job, and slowly, inevitably, becomes more me than I ever was. And maybe that's the real horror. Not that something replaced me, but that it's better at being me than I was. More functional, more stable, less haunted by grief and guilt. And everyone will think I've finally healed, finally moved past the accident, finally started living again. And they'll never know that the person they're celebrating isn't really alive at all. It's just something that learned to pass for human by studying someone who forgot how.